I can assure you one thing, you're gonna love today's video. If you'd like, we'll do it in a slightly different way, which I think better suits all of your tastes, because this way, besides enjoying it as always, you can improve a bit more. How are we gonna do it? Well, there will be key moments in the game where those of you who want to can pause the video to try and find the answers to the questions I'll be asking. That way, later on, when I solve them, you'll have a much clearer understanding of the general concept of that position. This way, I'm sure you'll improve your chess level much more. Hey, if you don't want to do this, just watch the video and that's it. You don't have to pause this video, okay? But let's try to approach it as a study session. As always, well, not as always, but as I've been doing lately, I'll leave the game we're analyzing right down here in the description, so those of you who want to analyze it later at home can do so, okay? Let's take the side of the black pieces in a Sicilian defense. Look how good this is! When there's a Sicilian defense on the board, we already know one thing. There's going to be a war, right? The Sicilian defense undoubtedly always provides a ruthless war, where the white pieces usually try to castle long, okay? And the black pieces try to castle short, creating a pitched battle where white launches their entire kingside to destroy the black monarch, and black does the same on the queen side. However, this game is quite peculiar and none of that happens. Instead, something much better happens. Anyway, let's get to it, stop the chatter, and move on to the interesting part. Knight f3 for white, knight f6, this is completely normal. This is called the classical Sicilian. There are videos on the channel. d4, playing the most aggressive variation of all, and the open variation. There are other slightly more closed variations here, like this one, the Rossolimo variation with this bishop e5. Yes, but without a doubt, the one that offers the best battle is the open variation with d4. The main objective of the c5 pawn in the Sicilian defense is exactly to be exchanged for a central pawn, so when this d4 is played, there's no doubt it should be exchanged. Knight takes pawn, here it would be a mistake to make knight for knight exchanges, and I'll explain why, friends. Although many of you might think that if we do knight takes knight, they'll have to capture with the queen, and having a queen in the center of the board, especially at the start, isn't a good idea, here it would actually be a very good idea for white because look, after the exchanges, white's queen is very well centralized and can't be easily driven away. How can we drive it away? Well, there's no piece that can drive it away. Not even a pawn. At most, a queen exchange could be offered, but white could even accept, and these two isolated and doubled pawns here would be a real burden, especially for an endgame. Therefore, here, without a doubt, this knight takes knight move, although it seems like a simple knight exchange would not be favorable for the black pieces. You understand? Very well. Here the most popular moves without a doubt are, for example, knight f6, attacking this pawn, e6, trying to form a setup later on with d5, d6, trying to form a dragon type setup, Scheveningen type. Well, there are many possible moves here, but without a doubt, the black player uses a rather tricky defense, which is this one here, e5. This variation is called the Loenthal variation of the Sicilian defense, and it has a very important characteristic. Let me explain. Normally, before playing e5, knight f6 is usually played first, attacking the pawn, and when it's defended, then play e5. And this has a small difference that you'll see isn't so small, and I'm going to show you right now. When e5 is played directly, the knight, logically, in both variations, the best move it has is this knight b5, because, because if black doesn't react correctly now, look what white can do. Play knight d6, giving check, and capturing this bishop. Without a doubt here, the best for the black pieces, if they don't want to lose the castling, is to capture this knight, and then the queen would enter with a lot of force, black would be super restricted, and without a doubt this would be much better for white. Therefore, here, after this knight b5, black must play d6, in such a way that now they are defending this pawn with the queen and the bishop. Therefore, the white knight can no longer jump to the d6 square. Do you see the importance of knowing all these details? The good thing about this video is that you can study it as many times as you want, okay? Very well. So here, normally, with the small difference that these two knights would be developed, see? Now, For example, a move like a 6 would force white to retreat their knight to a3. Let's rewind a bit to understand the difference now. Here, after this move d6, white, well, it's true they can play knight c3, and after a6, transposed to the same variation, let's say they have a move that I use myself whenever they play this variation against me with black, and it's c4. I'll explain why I love this move. The move has something very important, and it's the following. If you kick out the knight now, I'm going to place it on c3. And look at these two pawns, both the one on e4 and the one on c4, how they both converge to place a monster of a knight on d5, which really even hurts the eyes for the black pieces, because who kicks out that knight? Really no one. And then it's going to be defended. With this other knight, just in case some knight wants to exchange, this other one can come towards the center. This is the big difference between having developed this knight before or after that the c-pawn is free, and black has allowed that by not having played knight f6 first, attacking this pawn. The game continues with bishop e7, and now white plays a move that, well, for my taste, and I'm talking about personal preference, is not my favorite. Here, I would like to follow up, for example, with the move bishop d3. And let me explain why. Because after this move, for example, if they then play a move like, let's say, a 6, I already have time to play knight c3, and then this knight will come here and the other one will support it. The idea is that, of course, if we play knight c3 first, which is what happened in the game, after the move a6 by white, by black, you see what's happening here, right? This knight has no choice but to go to a 3. I always like to leave this c3 square available for as long as possible, to jump in with my knight and then redirect it here. This way, my knight has to go to a3, and that's what happened to white in the game. And while it's not a bad position by any means, since this knight can be recycled, in my view, it's not as comfortable a position as the variation I like so much. Many of you are probably thinking the following. Why has the black player decided to play bishop e7 and delay the development of the knight? You know why? Well, to launch directly with the move f5. Alright, we're in a structure very similar to a King's Indian defense structure, where normally this knight will end up on d4 and most likely be exchanged for another, and this pawn ends up like this. So this is the traditional break in the King's Indian. All of you who are already familiar, a bit more advanced, especially with these types of structures, will understand what I'm referring to. If not, it's absolutely fine. The day will come when you'll study it properly. And the idea is that f5 in these types of cases is the correct break. What happens here? Well, of course, if white captures, right, then bishop takes pawn, and black is left in a wonderful position, the two central pawns, the bishop on a very well-developed square. White has a very strange knight here that's far from entering the battle. Therefore, here, after this f5, white doesn't want to capture. What do they prefer? Well, for example, playing bishop d3, black at this moment decides to make an incredibly risky move. But I must tell you something. Just how incredibly fortunate it is that black made such a risky decision, because they gave us a truly marvelous and spectacular game that I assure you won't go unnoticed and will become one of your favorite games, absolutely without any shadow of a doubt. Especially for all of you who like attacking. Look at this. Here, black opted for the move f4. Let me explain. At first glance, it might seem like a normal move, right? All of you will be thinking, wait, chess teacher, this doesn't seem risky to me at all. In fact, it makes all the sense in the world. I'm getting ready to attack on the king side. You've explained in several of your videos that when the pawn chain points in a direction, the attack will naturally target that flank, right? But of course, there's something we have to keep in mind here. This whole approach would be correct if the castling had already been done, right? Because the king would be completely alone, since all the pieces are on the queen side, and then the attack would undoubtedly be very promising, thanks to the bishops, the queen, and probably the knight, along with this pawn that could eventually be pushed to break through. It would be a lethal attack. But, of course, what's the difference if the white player hasn't castled yet? Well, they can directly fire at the tip of this pawn chain. And now black has a serious, let's say, a serious problem here. Although you'll see that's not the case, black's idea was correct. The idea here is that we obviously don't want to take this pawn, because if we do, white would likely recapture at this point, opening the line toward the future castling, because we're not going to castle long, since it would be too exposed, and precisely all of white's firepower is on that flank, and we'd surely be helping white coordinate their rooks and queens, let's say, all their pieces toward the queen side. Therefore, after this Gre 3, we don't want to take the pawn. I hope all this is making sense. But do you know what Black's idea was at this point? Forget the pawn. I'm going to play this simple knight f6. Yes, yes, giving away the pawn. Look closely. After the exchanges, which is what happened in the game, pawn takes pawn, and bishop takes pawn, white has won a pawn. And not only that, but now they've developed all their pieces correctly. In exchange for what? Well, in exchange for black having their pieces fully ready to launch an attack, and not only that, but they have an idea that you're gonna love. The game continues with castling. Yes, yes, they've given up a pawn and now they're not attacking, they're just castling. But this is gonna be important. Black is now threatening something very strong. Something so strong that if white ignores everything and, for example, castles, a move like knight takes pawn would recover the pawn with very good prospects, and I'll explain why. This bishop is completely undefended, we'd make a discovered attack. After, for example, knight takes or bishop takes, rook takes bishop would follow, and then the pawn would simply be recovered and white's king would be completely exposed. Therefore, black's advantage would be very strong. If they already have a pretty interesting advantage right now being a pawn down, imagine if they recover the pawn. So white, with good judgment, decides to retreat the bishop. At this point, I'd like you to pause the video, especially those of you who want to train, to try to understand the plan that the black player carried out. It's a very complicated plan to understand. It's simply one move, okay? You have to find a move, but it's not easy at all, right? Let's see, for those of you who want to think, I'll leave it here. For those following the video, I'm going to say the move now, okay? The wonderful move is this one right here, knight to g4. And many of you will be thinking, let's see, chess teacher, the black player is going completely crazy, just like you in the videos. Well, yes, correct. It seems like he's going crazy because he's launching a knight alone into the attack. And what would happen in a war, for example, if we launch a single soldier into the enemy battlefield? Well, most likely, right? He's gonna end up suffering a lot and probably end up losing his life, right? But what happens? That actually, the black battle flank has snipers from a distance watching over this knight, and the plan is to completely blow up the white position, and I'm gonna explain exactly what the plan is now for the black pieces. Surely many of you would say, well, I'll kick out the knight, really, and nothing happened here. The knight has to go. And it all seemed like smoke, fireworks, but it wasn't an active battle flank at all. Well, hear the idea for black, and the idea is completely lethal, okay? It's the following. Blow things up with knight takes f2. And you know why? Because here, after the exchanges, the great idea for black is also to sacrifice the rook. For what? To eliminate all the defenses, and this is already completely won for the white pieces. Or sorry, for the black pieces. It didn't happen like that in the game, okay? They didn't kick out the knight, now I'm going to explain what happened in the game, obviously, but I'm showing you what would happen. If they kicked out the knight, for example, this check, if the king comes here, for example, he'd already lose the queen or the knight could even enter, and it would be mate in 4 moves. And if he comes here, well, the queen would enter. Likewise, the white king would be completely exposed, and for sure, he would lose the game. Let's put this back as it was to explain to you then what happened. In the game, the knight wasn't kicked out because you're seeing that it's completely dangerous and would end up being lethal. Well, in the game, bishop to e2 was played, a much better response, so that now they're attacking the knight with 2 pieces, and, well, who knows? Who knows if now the king is going to be a bit safer. The idea is that by moving the bishop, they're not only attacking the knight, but they're also clearing the d-file for the queen. For what? Do you remember the variation I just described, where the bishop came to give check and then the queen entered? Well, the queen entered through this square right here. The g5 square, if now the white pieces manage to give a check, on d5 they'll already cover the queen's entry square, and that's why this move, bishop to e2, is so interesting, to come with the queen to give check and cover the black entry. But you know what? The black player had everything under control. I guess you're already guessing where this is going, but for example, if you want, you can pause the video again to try to guess how things continue. The game continues in this way. Likewise, knight takes f2. A very good move. If he now takes this knight with bishop takes, the same variation as before would occur, losing the game for white. But of course, now we have the succulent intermediate move, queen d5 check. Moving the king, and above all, defending the g5 square. What happens? Well, now white, seeing that the danger has passed, takes the knight. A mistake, okay? What should white have done? Well, they probably had two options here, right? An interesting option, perhaps the best, let's say the only one because it's the best, is to play rook f1, and when the knight moves, then maybe castle long. And it seems the black's nightmare could perhaps still continue with this attack, yes, but it wouldn't be the same anymore. What happens? Well, here, white mistakenly considers the position safe, eliminating this knight and winning the piece. However, look at what the black pieces do here. They could immediately capture the bishop, yes. However, they first prefer to place this knight on b4, which you'll see is going to be the real protagonist. And so they are attacking the queen. Alright, if I ask you, friends, should this queen continue defending this point right here? Because if not, we already know the attack that exists. Rook takes, the bishop enters, the queen enters, and they end up winning the game. So where should white place the queen if they want to keep defending this point? There's no other square on the whole board except for this square right here, the h5 square, right? But then black's plan is as follows. Rook takes bishop anyway, sacrificing the exchange. King takes rook, and obviously now it's true that the plan can't be the same because the square is covered, but it starts with the same move, bishop h4 check, the king has to move away. Everything here seems absolutely perfect for white right now because it looks like the black attack is finally over, especially since the queen can't enter the position as it's very well covered by the defenders. So understanding that the specific piece that bothers us most is that powerful queen, what would all of you do in this situation? Well, indeed, the correct move here is this one right here. The simple but at the same time deadly g6, and indeed this move is practically fatal. If they want to keep defending the critical square, they can only go to h6, but this would be a blunder because the move bishop g5 would end up completely trapping the queen, and as you can see, that queen has no escape. White might as well resign now. Therefore, there's no choice here but to move the queen, and in this case, the white player placed it on f3. How to continue? It seems logical. The queen enters to give check once the critical square is no longer covered. The king tries to escape, and now a key moment in the game arrives. It seems that it seems that white has managed to escape black's lethal attack. Careful, we must keep something in mind. If black doesn't manage to checkmate, remember one thing, we're down a rook. Meaning if they survive the attack, they'll crush us, because they have an extra rook. Therefore, we have to be dynamic. We have to go all out. Slow moves won't work. And let's see if you can find the move here to define the attack to bring the remaining pieces into black's attack, right? You can pause the video, I'm going to say the solution right now. The idea is that the move is as follows. Bishop h3, brilliant move. What a beautiful move. It's true, the bishop is being sacrificed. But in exchange for gaining a tempo and being able to bring the rook into the attack too. Without a doubt, this attack with the rook will be completely lethal. You must understand one thing, even if we're down material, look where white's extra material is. Trapped on the queen side doing nothing, our attack is on the king side. What do I care if they have 25 rooks here if they can't help defend, right? Obviously, the gift of the bishop must be accepted. If not, it would simply be mate on the next move. So to avoid taking the bishop, they must block with the queen, leading to mate next move. So it must be captured. Now, how do we continue? Well, by bringing the rook into the open file. We bring the last piece we have left into the battle. Rook f8. Very well, what do the white pieces have to do here? They have no choice but to block the check. They have no choice because the king can't move. Bishop f3, and now let. Well, this is starting to get a bit more complicated because we have no more checks. What we do have are pieces that are quite well covered, and look at this. Queen e3. Why is this move so lethal? Well, it's not a check, but it is a deadly threat, right? It's threatening, for example, rook takes bishop check, and taking the queen, if I take the bishop and I take the queen, and even then I still think it would be mate. Then obviously, white could just resign here, right? However, they can't defend the capture of this bishop in any way. So here they decide on the right thing and decide to do the following. If you're gonna take my bishop, at least I'll take yours. And at least I also move away from the queen's check, because that way at least it'll just be an exchange of bishops. Did he evaluate well? Yeah, because if the black pieces capture, the bishop here, this would be nothing more than a draw because black doesn't have enough material. To deliver checkmate, they only have material for a perpetual check. And if instead of the queen they take the bishop with the rook, careful as this would be completely losing, because after king g2, black is safe here. There's no way to give check, or there is a way to give check, but no way to give mate. And then the white pieces have more than enough of a significant amount of extra material, both a rook and a knight, to win the game quite comfortably. Therefore, be careful. If I can't take the bishop with the queen or the rook, what do I do? Well, bring the piece I'm missing into the attack. I only have 3 pieces, but all 3 of them play perfectly together to end up deciding the game. As you can see, several things are being threatened now. Rook takes or queen takes is threatened again, now with much more drastic consequences because the knight helps. However, you can't really come to defend with the queen either, because, for example, this mate is being threatened. But then there are many threats here. The white player tries to move in with the knight to threaten the queen, to say, let's see what you do with the queen. Delivering mate now is impossible because the queen covers, but yes, queen takes knight. Sorry, queen takes bishop. The king escapes. And here there's only one move, friends. One that gives the game to the black pieces. Only one? Let's take a look and see who is able to track it down. You can pause the video and think for as many minutes as you need. I warn you that it is not a check, right? The move is as follows. I'm gonna say it. Knight f2. And white is in serious trouble, but very strong trouble, huh? Why? Because there is nothing to do to stop the threat of queen takes rook. In fact, it would be mate now, and how do we defend this rook? There is no way. The only thing white can do is try to escape with the king, but look how the game continues. Queen takes rook check, and when the king escapes, simply queen takes the other rook, and I take both rooks, and it will continue like this. Queen takes pawn, check, I'm gonna take this knight. You don't have checks to activate yourself, so here, without a doubt, the advantage is so abysmal that the white player, perplexed, decided to resign the game. Don't tell me you haven't enjoyed this game a lot today. You'll probably watch it more than once because, honestly, it gives you goosebumps. I hope you loved it. Let me know in the comments. I'm gonna read all of you if you like this video format, because if you like it, I'm gonna make more videos like this. The idea is to try to study all together, of course. Leave a good like, as I always tell you, if you like this video, subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos like this, and we'll see you tomorrow, as always, if you're subscribers to the channel, in the next video, friends. Bye.